Hello everyone and welcome back to the kitchen table. Today on the kitchen table a bit of a special because as you can see for the first time we have a guest at the kitchen table. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Sally French, also known as the Drone Girl. Sally, hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much indeed. So we're just going to have a bit of a chat really about a subject that we found out that we both have a bit of an interest in. But before we go any further, as is traditional on this channel, and it's my kitchen table, so my rules, I've got a nice beverage that I'm going to share with you. This is an organic Cabernet Sauvignon from Chile called Las Mulas, with a lovely donkey on it. So what could be better than that? To you and to Sally, cheers.
Cheers. I've got my coconut water. It's a little too early here in California for wine.
Well, yes, and it's probably too late here for wine, but you know, I don't think there's such a thing as being too late for wine. But that'll do for now. So yes, Sally French, welcome. Sally is a journalist. She's also a blogger. She's the author of the Drone Girl blog, and is at the Drone Girl on Twitter. And as you can tell by that handle, is a bit of a drone fan. Now, we discovered with a kind of a bit of a chat on Twitter that we both have a bit of an interest and a concern, and we were wondering why there aren't so many female drone pilots out there, it appears. So maybe we could start, Sally, just by letting us know how you got into flying drones.
Yes, so I actually first got into drones about 2-3 years ago now. Before this, I had no idea what a drone was. I thought it was some type of Star Wars thing. But I was in a journalism class at the University of Missouri, where I have a bachelor's degree from. I needed one more credit to graduate, and this was the first year they were offering a drone class to study how drones can be used for journalism. And so I needed one more credit, so I was like, well, I'll take this class. We flew drones to cover stories, to get aerial footage of things like fires or geese migrations, and then airing those stories with aerial footage. And so that class ended, and I decided what better way to keep it up than to have a blog and blog about drones, blog about using drones in journalism. So here I am.
Cool. And so at the moment, what's your current drone of choice?
Ooh, my current drone of choice. I do love the original Phantom. I think that's a great intro drone. When I first got into drones in the class, some people had built them themselves. And something sort of bizarre is I wanted to build a drone, but I had no idea how to solder or build things because I never grew up soldering, and I didn't know how to do that. And so a Phantom was pretty much ready to fly out of the box. And so that was my very first starter drone. And that's led me to learn how to build drones and made me realize I want to learn how to do these things and put things together and solder them. But I love the Phantom.
Cool. Well, actually, that's really interesting because when we were having a discussion about this, it's I know that some people would perhaps think, well, that's a very typical kind of thing. You know, here's a girl who didn't do tinkering with engineering when she was so. But you see, I was exactly the same. The whole reason why I got into flying a Phantom, and my first one wasn't the original Phantom; it was the first Phantom 2. It was the Vision. But for exactly the same reason is that I'd done a very, I mean, we're talking, 10 minutes soldering with my dad, like 30 years ago, and wouldn't know where to start and wouldn't know how to build a drone. But I've always been fascinated by flight and flying. I used to have a private pilot's license and fly microlight aircraft in the UK before children. And so flying things have always been a fascination. But I didn't have the confidence to do, go out and buy a kit of parts and solder it all together either, because I didn't have any clue how they worked. And quite frankly, the idea of just launching in there with a soldering iron was just quite frightening. So when I saw that there was this virtually complete off-the-shelf thing that you could take home, charge, read the manual, plug your smartphone into it, and then within minutes of you being ready to go, up it would go. That's what got me going into the whole thing. So very similar reasons. And it was really interesting, and I just wondered, so it's not just, I think one of the things about the hobby is that it probably had a perception, as did a lot of remote control flying, that it was something that you had to have a workshop and have sort of years of experience of mechanical or electrical engineering to get involved in. But that really isn't the case, and anybody can. And in fact, people are. Unfortunately, perhaps sometimes not reading the manual fully, or maybe flying as responsibly as they should do. But people are, aren't they? They're just going into shops and stores and saying, this looks cool, I could have a go, and doing it. And I think that's brilliant.
Absolutely. You do see people who don't read the manuals and don't realize what GPS mode is and all that. So read your manual.
Absolutely, and that's the other thing. I think the other thing that I wonder if this is something that one of the discussions we had was whether or not the typical kind of setup for, if I wanted to find out how to fly a remote control aircraft, then there would be a whole thing about maybe in the past you have to go and join your local club, you need a runway, you need some sort of quite large area. And I'm wondering if there was something about that kind of environment that was off-putting to women, do you think, getting involved in sort of remote control generally, like there might be in getting involved in a lot of the tech kind of industries and the tech hobbies?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to just sort of not knowing those initial steps. So I would have built a drone if I knew the basics of soldering, and it's kind of implied if you grew up learning how to do that, oh, you can just build it and it's no problem. And same as kind of just going to a club. I would have probably joined an RC club a lot earlier if there were other people like me there, and when there's no other women there, that's sort of already a disqualifier, I guess, to say that there are no other women there. So someone's got to be the first. I did join the Orange County, LA drone user group in Southern California. I went to a few meetups with them. Very great people, super helpful. If you're in the Southern California area, you should join it. But I was, for a while, the only woman there as well. And definitely when you go there, people are like, wow, there's a woman here. This is really surprising. I mean, everyone's very, very nice in that group. But even at the same time, things happen that people say, oh, I want to watch you fly. And sometimes when you're the only woman in a group like that, it's sort of intimidating because every guy is going to stop and watch you fly because they want to see if you can. So it's a lot more nerve-wracking. If you crash, everybody's watching you and judging you, and you're kind of the one spokesperson for women as a whole. And if you crash once, then I'm worried that people will think women crash drones. So it's definitely a little intimidating to go to these types of events and be the only woman there.
Sure, but it works both ways. I mean, I'm a stay-at-home dad with 2 kids under 8, and for both of them, I was, their full-time carer at home from 6 months of age. So, being the only guy walking into a room full of 35 nursing mothers at the kind of toddler groups, it's exactly the same. You either decide that you're going to do it and or not. And I decided if you can't beat them, join them. So I ended up running the toddler group, but that's a whole different ballgame.
Good for you.
Yeah, but it's a similar thing. I know exactly what you're saying from the other side. It's one of those things where if you feel that you're going to be under the microscope, then that's not necessarily enjoyable. I mean, have you ever encountered any kind of either overtly or kind of subtle negativity because you were female?
Yes, so I guess I'll sort of start with the subtle. I would say 99% of the guys in drones are very supportive of women and love to help women fly. But even those people sort of do subtle things that they don't realize are maybe kind of hidden steps towards sexism. Actually, the first time I was in this drone journalism class at the University of Missouri, they had a few drones, and the class was about 50-50 men and women. And they only had 3 drones, so they had to pick the first 3 people to fly them. Mm-hmm. And they gave the drones to 3 guys, and not a single one went to a girl. Even though the class was 50-50, you would think at least one of the drones would be handed to a woman first.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things that I don't think the professor was conscious that, oh, I'm not going to hand this to a girl, but maybe subconsciously he thought, a woman's not going to want to fly this, so I'm just going to hand this to a guy first. And so there's little subtle things that go on like that, and that's really too bad. And then there's also kind of more extreme version or in extreme instances of sexism, and I think we see it a lot in the forums. A lot of people say women don't fly drones. You know, I've never seen a woman fly a drone, therefore they don't. And that to me is a little bit wrong, especially, you know, the marketing, it always shows men flying drones. And whenever we look at CEOs of companies, it's always men are all the CEOs of drone companies. And it's kind of just impressing the idea among women saying, you know, this isn't for you. You know, this is a product for men. And that's wrong. And so I think I'm glad we're having that conversation so we can address that it's not okay to think that women don't fly drones.
Well, even worse than that is that you know, I've seen comments which are implying quite heavily not only that they don't, but that they can't.
Right.
Which, you know, I find that bizarre, because I think, and again, this is where maybe drones like the Phantom or the real ready-to-fly range have kind of thrown a few people a bit of a curveball, because historically, of course, you would buy something at best in a massive kit of parts and would have to spend hours and hours of your time, like you say, soldering together or, you know, fabricating bits and everything else. And then there's the whole kind of, you know, if you haven't got the experience and you haven't got the confidence or anywhere to test flight, that whole thing. Whereas, you know, ready to fly, you don't really need to know. It's good to know how it works, but you don't need to. You don't have to have any of the technical. And let's face it, being able to fly with some precision and some accuracy is not a skill that necessarily equates with being able to, you know, handle hot tools and you know, have a shed. It's not the same. And in fact, you know, but I have seen, as well as you, I've seen on the forums where there is these kind of implied comments, and if there ever is any kind of crash footage or anything, you see those little subtle digs.
Right. One of the most bizarre instances, actually, this month, February, is Female Pilots Awareness Month, and DJI is sort of the one hosting this, and they posted a picture on their website of two of my really good friends, Rihanna Larkin and Isabel Nyroth, and they're flying the new DJI Inspire 1. And in that photo, if you're familiar with the DJI Phantom 2, you mount your iPod to the controller, to the transmitter, and it goes horizontally. Mm-hmm. Now, the Inspire 1 mount is a little bit different, and it looks like the mount holds it vertically. And so someone commented on that photo saying, this photo is photoshopped. Those women aren't actually flying the drone because the mount is not on correctly. And they were in this whole argument, and I wrote back saying, you know, they don't have to prove to you anything. I know it's on correctly. They know it's on correctly. And one of the reasons why women don't get into this hobby is because they constantly feel scrutinized and like they have to prove that they're right. The funniest part is that they were absolutely right. DJI ended up commenting later themselves saying that the mount is actually different on the Inspire drone. And it's different than if you have a Phantom. And it was one of those things that was, you know, this person complaining that women are wrong in the way that they set their drones was actually wrong themselves. I guess it was a little bit of sweet revenge for them. Yeah. But it's just indicative of so many instances of people saying, you're doing this wrong, you don't know how to do it right because you're a woman, and I'm going to assume that this photo was photoshopped, when it's very clearly not.
Yeah, and I must admit, 100% of every idiotic crash caused by an imbecile at the controls that I've ever seen on YouTube has been piloted by a man. So, you know, just looking at the statistics, it's not looking good for the guys, really. We are responsible for 100% of the published accidents. So that's a really, if you're an insurer, yeah, that's no good. But it was really interesting, and that led me to another thought that we had. Obviously, my youngest is Rosie. She's just about to turn 4 in a couple of months' time. And I am very keen that for both of my kids, that they should never feel that they can't do something. That's very different to not wanting to do something.
Right,
and I think
right.
one of the things that we as guys in a kind of a techie kind of hobby should be doing is giving our daughters, female friends, wives, partners, whoever, giving people the chance to do it. If they don't want to do it, that's fine. But I think, like as you've said earlier, there is in some people, and it's not probably even not even conscious, but there's this thing that, oh well, girls don't fly drones.
Right.
Well, maybe that's because they don't want to, but if they've never been given the chance, or you've never even offered to take them along, you might find they love it and they want to find out some more, and you might find they're better at flying than you are, which is a
Right.
risk, but that'd be cool. I wouldn't mind, and I think that's really important. I think for those of us who maybe haven't thought about it in any kind of way and have just assumed because we don't see it. I mean, of my views on my video, we get you can get statistics from YouTube. 97% of my views are male, and I would say probably 99 point something percent of my comments are. But there are some female viewers because the statistics tell me there are, and there are some people who comment because we've spoken. So
Right.
they are out there. But I can
Yeah.
but there's a big I can imagine as well how on the other side there's nothing to, like, as I said, if you look at all the examples of idiocy and crashes and people flying their Phantom drunk into the White House, there's plenty of scope for people to be foolish and make mistakes and crash, and we all do. I don't know anyone who hasn't crashed. It's the old maxim: if you haven't crashed, you're not doing it right.
I've definitely crashed a few times.
Yeah, my first ever flight with my brand new, one of the first Visions in the country. I pre-ordered it, and I even put the video up on my channel a few months ago when I found it. I have been flying little hub sounds inside, which can turn on a dime, and they're really agile. And I took this thing out. There was a bit of a wind. I forgot how heavy it was and the inertia, and I ended up lodging it 60 feet up a tree on my first flight.
Ooh, whoops.
Trees are my nemesis. It wasn't the first tree, it won't be the last. But we've all done it, and I don't think I don't know. One of the things that's really good, I think, about the Ready to Fly drones is that now, whilst it's you can, if you want, go and join a club and meet other like-minded people. You don't have to, because you can go and get a suitably open space and you can just have a little practice yourself. You don't have to feel under scrutiny if you don't want to. There isn't that. The instructions these days are pretty reasonable. You've got lots of instructional stuff on YouTube, and I think people should just give a go. And I think if you're a guy with a drone and you have some daughters or anybody close to you who you've never thought of asking if they're interested, why not ask them in Female Pilot Awareness Month, and then every month, and then bring them along.
Totally.
Cool. Now, one of the things that you have, and I think some of the co-founders you've already mentioned, there is a Facebook group that you've kind of put together specifically for female pilots who want to get together with other female pilots. Is that right?
Yes. So I encourage any women out there, and even if you're a man, you can like the page too. Anyone can like it. It's called Amelia Drone Hearts. It was actually started by Rihanna Larkin. She's based out in the Pacific Northwest around Portland, and she's an accomplished drone pilot. She's done a lot of search and rescue work. She's been in Indonesia. Really, really great woman. And so when I first got into drones, I called myself the drone girl because I was literally the only one I knew who liked drones. So I was like, sure, I'm going to be the drone girl. But this group is awesome. It started, really small, just a few people, and more women have joined it. And it's a really, really supportive group, and it's wild to see how many women out there are in drones. I'm sure you feel like this as a stay-at-home dad. You're the only stay-at-home dad that you know, probably.
Pretty much.
And I feel that way. I'm the only female drone pilot that I knew. And then I met one friend, and then I met another friend. And I was like, okay, I have like 3 female friends who know about drones. And then all of a sudden I joined this group, and there's hundreds of women in there. And I'm sure there are hundreds of stay-at-home dads out there in the world. You need a Facebook group too.
Yeah, yeah, but as I keep saying to everybody, my claim to fame is I'm one of only 3 people left on the planet that don't have a Facebook account.
Oh, okay.
I wear that badge with pride. No, there are other stay-at-home dads, but and in fact I've got 650 of them in a Google Plus circle, but you know we'll go that way. But even when I remember getting a phone call once, and it does work. This is an example of how it works in the other direction. I got a phone call once, and the person calling asked to speak to my wife. And I said, "Oh, she's not here right now. Can I ask who's calling?" She said, "Oh, yeah, it's such and such from the midwife. We need to just check over your baby and to be signed off." And I said, "Well, my wife's at work. I'm the stay-at-home parent." And actually, she was really apologetic for assuming. But it's funny how we all do have assumptions about the stereotypical. And we should challenge those really as to why we have them. And of course, it's because stereotypes are stereotypes because they're generally true, but that doesn't mean that they're generally right. And we should challenge those in whatever direction. So it was really interesting. And speaking of challenging stereotypes, I read one of your blog posts about someone who called out a fairly well-known group of drone enthusiasts about a little bit of probably, I wouldn't say, would you call it overt sexism on their website?
What I thought was sort of interesting is I'll explain what happened. I don't really think it was the most overt thing, actually. And to be quite honest, I didn't find it quite offensive initially. What happened is that Rafael Perker, you might also know him as Trappy in the drone world.
Yes.
He's one of the most famous drone pilots out there, probably the most famous. You probably know him from the big FAA lawsuit where he was fined $10,000. So he sells gear on his site, and he was offering a discount on one of his products that said 12% off, which will make your wives or girlfriends happy, something to that extent. And to be quite honest, I didn't find this that offensive, but I do think it does perpetuate the idea that women don't buy drones, men buy them, heterosexual men buy them, and their wives or girlfriends will be happy when they get a discount.
They put up with the hobby providing it doesn't cost too much.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's very sweet.
Right, and so I'm not crazy about that stereotype perpetuating the idea that only men buy drones. But someone else felt that way. His name is Anders, and he wrote in a private message to Trappy saying, this perpetuates the idea that only men fly drones. It is sort of inherently exclusive, that women wouldn't buy them. This discount is implying that if you're using this discount, you're a man. So he wrote that to Trappy, and Trappy's response was pretty harsh, to say the least. He said that this is completely wrong, that Anders was, like a crybaby and all these things that were absolutely not true. And so Anders, the man who wrote that email, posted that publicly and said, I don't like this response from Trappy. So I wrote back. I wrote to Trappy. I asked, what's up? And Trappy was initially very, very defensive and saying that, Anders doesn't have to buy stuff from his site and, all this stuff, which is true. Anders doesn't have to patronize that site. But I wrote this blog post kind of talking about, why there are so few women in drones. And you go to a site like Team Black Sheep, which is, one of the most well-known drone sites out there. And for a woman to feel like she's not really welcome there, it's sort of no wonder why women aren't in drones. And I read this really great piece in NPR, and it was talking about why there are so few women in computer science. And it talked about back, in the 60s and 70s, when computers were very much just kind of a hobby personal thing, not mainstream, there were equal number of men and women in computers. And it wasn't until the 80s that women started dropping out of studying computer science. The 80s were when personal computers became really mainstream and they ended up in everyone's houses. So why did women drop out when computers became mainstream?
Yeah.
It was because computers were marketed towards men. All the marketing said the person who buys a computer is a person who plays video games and is a man.
Yeah, it's true.
Right, and so women, never had computers growing up, therefore they didn't feel comfortable studying computer science in college. Therefore, that's why we see so many.
Or if they did, it was their brother's computer or their
Right,
dad's computer. It wasn't theirs, because I remember this very well. I remember a friend having I used to go around to his house. He had a Commodore VIC-20, which was for the day, I think 16K of RAM. And I remember being there. And I was probably 10, maybe a bit younger, 9, 10. And this was his, and it was very much, that's the boys thing, and it wasn't anything to do with the girls, any of them in the family, the mother or the daughter. This was a dad and son kind of thing, because it was like, that's what it was. And that, you're exactly right. If you look, I remember, and you look back, some of the ads from the 80s in the personal computing magazines, it was all emphasizing just like you said, like similar to the drone stuff. It was all males in there, and the advertising. It was all the language was designed to attract men, and there was nothing that said, you can use this tool can be used for any purpose, anything at all. It's just to your imagination. And let's face it, we've both got imaginations and can learn stuff, so it's not difficult. It's interesting. My son does. Does a code club at school, which I think is one of the ones, the Google initiative. And and they're a 50-50 split. They're doing Scratch, the kind of very basic kind of programming language that teaches you the steps behind programming, and it's a 50-50 class. But when you look at sort of I guess what you call high school, and then the numbers differentiate, and I don't know if that's the same link with the fact that when you look at getting more advanced in physics and maths and engineering, exactly the same thing happens. And it can't be because there's a gap in ability. It must purely be because there is this either discomfort in being involved in it if you're female, or there's a perceived or real barrier.
Right. And I think, back in the 80s, there was sort of this real barrier because this NPR article profiled some woman who was great at math, all growing up through high school, the top of her class. And so she went on to study computer science, and she immediately got the first C of her life. And it was because she had never actually used a computer before in the 80s. And because she didn't know the basic functionality of things that the men who had used computers took for granted, things like saving documents and all that, and how the internet works.
Yeah.
And so she fell behind really quickly. And I think we're sort of in that same phase in drones right now, where drones are starting to become more and more mainstream. You'll see more people got Phantoms for Christmas this year than any other.
Yeah.
Tons and tons more people have drones, but if we keep marketing them towards men, then men will be the only ones who have Phantoms. And then, when it goes on to using, more advanced drones, especially we have this explosion of drones for things like agriculture and search and rescue and really real important applications that people can contribute to. If people in high school never had if a woman never had a Phantom in high school, how will she know, I can use a drone for agriculture or search and rescue for my career? She probably wouldn't. Whereas if a man has a Phantom in high school, he is exposed to that. And so I would really love to see this marketing change and say, this DJI Phantom that you have, a girl can have it, a boy can have it, and it can lead to so many great things. I mean, we know there are so many great uses for drones, and so it would be great to have it in the hands of as many people as possible. So DJI has done a really good job of this, making this Women in Drones Month, making that extra effort to post photos of women flying drones, to highlight women who are great role models in drones. They've done tons of great little video series on women who've been influential in the drone sphere, and I think that's really great to make an extra effort to show, you know, a girl out there who's 12 years old and maybe interested in drones, showing her, hey, you know, this woman's just like you. She flies a drone, so can you.
Absolutely, and in fact, there's an all-female aerial video business in the UK called the Helicopter Girls, who don't use helicopters, they use drones, and their work's been featured on you know, mainstream TV doing the aerial shots, and that's a great example of some people who obviously got into the business early enough. And who knows, I don't know, I must find out from them what their background is, whether it's a background first in film or was it first in kind of remote control and drones. But it doesn't matter, because what they've done is found a great niche, and the pair of them together have, you know, made a very strong business. And I wouldn't say quite cornered the market, but, you know, they're doing extremely well. And that's an all-female company with all-female employees who are out doing the filming and the flying, which is fantastic, and just goes to show. And as we all know, in some cases, if they're having also to do pitches and pitch for the business, then they may well be at an advantage, because they're going to have something unique and different, because everybody else will roll in front of them, will be the guys who are giving them the same spiel. So why not? You know, get involved, and even if you don't want to do it as a business, but you just have an interest in doing it as a hobby. The other thing I've had people say to me is, well, yeah, okay, the drone flies all right, but when I need to do the firmware update, or when I want to tweak it, I've got to put it into the computer, it all gets really technical. Well, if you look at the comments on my channel, where I do some of the how-to videos and how you to update the firmware and bits and pieces, 99% of the comments are from guys, and all those comments are asking for help. We're not all naturally just know how to do it. Sometimes you need some help, and the help is out there wherever you are. And I think, you know, as I said to the guys watching, if you particularly if you have daughters who are like Sally said, you know, you've got 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old daughters, and you've never even thought to ask them because you just assumed they wouldn't be interested, why not go and ask them if they want to come out next time you go flying and have a go? Because let's face it, if you put it into full GPS mode, that's quite a confidence booster to someone who's feeling a bit nervous, because you can just tell them if it starts to go wrong, let go of everything and it will sort itself out. And that's really, to have somebody behind you just telling you these things. And you might find you then have somebody who will come back to you and say, well, you know, hey Dad, can we do that again? And how do we work the camera? And I've got this great idea for, you know, can we take this? Can I get permission to take this to school and use it in a project? And suddenly, before you know it, you have somebody who in 10 years' time might be the next CEO of 3DR or DJI or whoever.
Right. And it's for anyone. I love Frozen just as much as the next person. And you can love princesses and you can love drones. So don't just think because your 12-year-old daughter is not interested in boy things, if she loves Frozen, she can love drones too. Absolutely,
absolutely. My house is full of Frozen drones. What a great idea, actually. Maybe, and that's. But you're right, though.
It's concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just, as soon as we finish this call, I'm on to Disney. I've got a brilliant pitch for them. But it's true. I mean, we're kind of making light of it, but I'm quite passionate about the fact that, you know, in any walk of life, we shouldn't just assume that our daughters, our wives, our friends, our you know, cousins, whoever, our female people that we know in our lives won't be interested. Just like, and it works the other way around. You know, we both are guilty. I think both sexes can be guilty of that big assumption that, well, this is kind of girl stuff, and you know, he wouldn't be interested. Well, you know, you don't know until you ask. Absolutely. So I think it's great. So yeah, so it's it's Female Pilot Awareness Month, and I think you know, as you say, DJI have produced some videos and they've got some stuff on the website, so check those out. Check out Sally's blog, which is www.thedronegirl.com, and you're also on Twitter at @thedronegirl, aren't you?
Yes.
Cool.
Someone took the drone girl without the so I had to buy the drone girl as my URL.
Yeah, but it adds a touch of something, you know. I mean, it's slightly longer to type out, but it adds a certain something. I think a definite article brings something out. And the Facebook group is Amelia Drone Hearts.
Yes, if you search in Amelia Drone Hearts on Facebook, you'll find it.
Yeah, I'll put links down at the description of this video with all those links. Sally, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting, and thank you for having a very pleasant conversation this evening, my time, this afternoon, your time. It's been great, and I hope that if only one or two people watching just suddenly decide to maybe just change a little bit the way they feel about women and piloting, then it's been a great thing. And if more than that do it, then brilliant.
I agree. Thanks for hosting this. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. It's been fantastic. Thanks to you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. So from Sally and I, until next time, we will say see you again on the kitchen table. Cheers.
Cheers.